So let's start with the biggest game of them all, which was Manchester United against Liverpool. I mean, I don't know what to say. Liverpool go in there, 5-0 victory, historic result. This is United's worst loss since you have to go all the way back to October of 2020. Not that long ago. They lost 6-1 to Tottenham last season. But it's Liverpool's biggest ever away win over United, their biggest win over United period since 1925. And here's the money stat. Mo Salah, the first visiting player to score a hat-trick at Old Trafford since my Ronaldo, scored 3 for Real Madrid in a Champions League quarterfinal second leg back in 2003. It's a famous game. David Beckham came off the bench, scored twice for United. Months before signing with Real Madrid. And that game altered Premier League history because supposedly it was that game that Roman Abramovich watched and was so blown away by the atmosphere that prompted him to want to buy a Premier League team. He bought Chelsea and...
the rest is history.
Yep.
Okay. I think that we can boil this all down to one question. And so there will be more, but I'm going to ask you this one question, Mossy. Is it that Manchester United does not have the talent to do what a lot of people expect? Or is it that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, the head coach, does not have the talent, not have what it takes to get the most out of this talent? And because that's ultimately, because Ole in, Ole out, all this kind of stuff that is going to continue to go on, and rightfully so. I mean, would happen any place else, given these types of results and given this type of beating that they took. But what you have to decide is there somebody else out there that could come in and do better with this assembled group of talent, which is high priced and is undeniably talented here?
Yes, there are issues with that squad. It's not a perfect squad, and we'll get to that in a second, but a shaky manager exacerbates those issues. I think if you put a better guy in there, he could work around some of the
What does that mean better, though? What does it mean better? I mean, Ole has only improved the team in the years that he has been there.
Yeah, but as I said at the start of the season, Manchester United, I got a little bit of a Frank Lampard last season with Chelsea vibe out of the situation, which is to say, Lampard had done a pretty good job the previous campaign. Chelsea, if you recall, were under a transfer ban, so they had to rely on a lot of young players. It was, to the extent that this ever exists at Chelsea, a transition season, and he did pretty well. They finished in the top 4. They got to the FA Cup final. They got to the knockout stages of the Champions League. But then the transfer ban was lifted. They went out. They spent a ton of money. They brought in the Werners and Havertz and Ziyech. And all of a sudden, it was this star-studded squad that was built to win major trophies. And you thought, well, I don't know if this job's gotten a little too big for Lampard now. And sure enough, he struggled. They made a change. They brought in Tuchel, ended up winning the Champions League. And I think it's a somewhat similar dynamic here. I continue to say I think Solskjaer did a pretty good job following Mourinho and bringing some calmness and stability there. But as they've kept spending money and adding pieces, including most notably, when you add a 36-year-old Cristiano Ronaldo, that means you're in win-now mode. That's a final piece to the puzzle type of move. And so this team is built to win major trophies this season. And you think about it, is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer the manager that's going to lead him to a Premier League or Champions League title?
But why do you say his name with such disdain?
I just think you look at the other, and we thought it was going to be a big 4 in the Premier League. It's really a big 3, and United belong in that Arsenal, Tottenham as far as the big 6 go. But you look at the other big 3, and you've got Klopp, Pep, and Tuchel, and you have Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. That's bringing a knife to a gunfight. I'm sorry, he's just not on the level of those 3. And I think if you put any one of those 3 in charge of United, like I said, they would figure out a way to work around some of the problems and do a better job than he's doing.
Do you think that the fact that he is I don't know if he's a club legend, but he is certainly a player of note and notoriety when it comes to Manchester United and his history there and his past. Do you think that has actually worked against him? Because if he was not a former Manchester United great, I think that our perception of him would be different. There were those that say that he actually has benefited from the fact that, and maybe he would have been gone earlier had he not had this connection to the past.
I'm more on that side. I think it's bought him a lot of goodwill with the fans. You think it's actually a negative?
I think that it is exacerbated, to use your word, because of who he is. And it would be, I'm not saying that somebody different wouldn't be under pressure right now or wouldn't come in for criticism, but I just think that this, to your point, the disdain is different. And I just saw it. I mean, I saw it in the way that you talked about him, and I mean, it doesn't change the fact that that people feel this way about him. You can't change what your heart feels when it comes to something like that. But I just think that it is it's personal to a lot of people in a strange way.
Now, I wouldn't get rid of him unless you have a replacement lined up.
Sure.
So
You need a Tuchel. I mean,
if this hasn't started already, I would begin the courting process with the two big names that are out there, Zidane and Antonio Conte.
Right.
I think either one would be an improvement over Solskjaer. The Ajax manager, Erik ten Hag, has suddenly become a very hot guy here. And we'll get to Ajax in a minute because I'm very impressed with that team. But he's gainfully employed, so there's no guarantee he would leave Ajax mid-season. The interesting dynamic here is Manchester United have some competition on the managerial front from Newcastle, who finally put Steve Bruce out of his misery. And so they're in the market for a manager as well. And some of the same names are getting tossed around for them. So who would have thought?
If you're looking, though, I mean, if you're looking at it with, I mean, so notwithstanding the fact that I do believe that somebody from the outside would look and say, geez, that is a lot of talent to work with there, and they might not be getting the most out of it. But if you're looking at it from a practical perspective, you're going to have plenty of money at Newcastle. I'm assuming that they stay up, but that's a big assumption. But let's say that they stay up. Still, the room to grow is so much more vast than at Manchester United, and the pressure is still going to be there. But I think, yeah, I mean, I think that it will turn heads in a way that it hasn't happened when it comes to Newcastle relative to Manchester United. So, yeah, there's a new sheriff in town.
Now, in terms of the structural issues with United, the Ronaldo conundrum has become fascinating to me. And I'm going to harken back to the Champions League game because I thought that really exemplified the dilemma that people are dealing with. They were down 2-0 in that game, and everybody was pointing out the fact that having Ronaldo on your team, he doesn't lift a finger defensively. He completely undermines your ability to press higher up the field. So it puts a lot of pressure on that midfield, which isn't great. That central midfield is the weakest part of that squad. They don't have the same pedigree there that they do everywhere else with guys like Fred and McTominay. And so they're struggling. They're giving up chances. They're trailing 2-0. Ronaldo's taking a lambasting on Twitter. And then they have this stirring second half comeback in which he scores a dramatic late winner. And then the Ronaldo fans come out in full force and say, look, you're overthinking this. Look at how many goals this guy scores. He scores clutch goals. To your point, when we're talking about MLS MVP, goals win games. That's the most important asset you can have as a guy that finds the back of the net with regularity. And so I don't know. I think the answer is probably somewhere in the middle because I do think Ronaldo has become a player that having him on your team takes some things off the plate, you know, in terms of how you can play collectively. He takes some things off the table, but he also provides you with goals. So trying to figure out Ronaldo's value to a team right now.
Dump it on Ronaldo too. I mean, why is it Cristiano Ronaldo's fault? Why is this being heaped on him?
And frankly, even the Liverpool game, he did score a phenomenal goal in the second half, which was wiped out for one of those only in the Premier League offsides because I've seen that replay. I cannot fathom that he was offside.
Even when they showed the lines, I thought that it showed that he was onside. That was
frankly the Jota goal, Liverpool's second goal. That one to the naked eye looked offside to me, but hey, they drew the line. They said one was good, the other wasn't. So I guess. But let's say that goal stands. Ronaldo fans would have come out of that game and said, look, he did his job. He scored a goal. It's not his fault. You conceded 5. But some people say it is partly his fault you're conceding 5 because, you know, you're looking at a team as a whole unit. And so the way he plays even affects your defensively and your shape and all that. So, yeah, you get into a real sort of in the weeds sort of tactical thing there. But it's just an interesting conundrum that we could actually be debating whether a team. And by the way, this debate started with Juventus. You're now hearing some Juventus people saying they're not entirely displeased that he left the team. So you're talking about one of the greatest players of all time who's still putting up amazing numbers, but there's this debate right now about whether, I mean, Rodney Marsh, I heard say it's one of the worst signings in Manchester United history. I mean, you know.
Rodney didn't defend. Messi doesn't defend. Oh my goodness. I don't know. I think it's unfair. I think it's unfair to Cristiano Ronaldo. Although we did say last week, when you sign somebody like that, you should be prepared for how he plays. I mean, it's not as if we haven't seen him over the last 15 years play. We know, and I know he's evolved over time, but we know what player he is. You knew what type of player you were getting. All right, so does Ole survive this?
No, he'll be out sometime in the next few weeks.
You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops every week. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.